I want to take our attention now to Revelation 13 and verses 11 and 12 as we drill deeper into this scenario. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. So here we see that the two-horned beast comes up, and he speaks as a dragon, and enforces the policies of the beast after the wound has been healed. So these are papal decisions that are being enforced. If it were before the wound was healed, then it would not be papal decisions. But it tells us, it's in the last clause of verse 12, it says, and them that dwell on the earth to worship the beast whose deadly wound was healed, past tense, healed, was healed. So after the wound has been healed, the dragon's voice will speak. And this is why when we looked in verses 3 and 4, we saw the deadly wound was inflicted, and the whole world wandered after the beast, and they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, who's able to make war with him. This is where this comes together. And those who refuse to worship in conformance with this dragon's decree, verse 15 has a word for them. Here it comes. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. So, on the one hand, we find the beast is speaking, and when he's speaking, the dragon's voice. And then he's to speak again in verse 15. When he speaks, he's speaking against those who refuse to conform with his worship statutes. Refuse those who will not conform. They refuse to worship in obedience to the decrees of the church and state mandates. And they would be singled out or be killed. It says, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship, as many as refuse, as many as disobey to worship the image of the beast should be killed. And of course, we see verse 16 and 17 shows economic embargo that would be placed upon them, economic restrictions. They cannot buy or sell except they conform. This is why God has to provide a place of defense and protection for his church against this wholesale onslaught of wickedness on her. This is where the pre-Advent kingdom comes in. Now, Newsweek magazine of December 13th, 2024, it says, Donald Trump changes tune on Project 2025. Very conservative and very good. So at one time he said he had nothing to do with it, and now they quote him as saying it's very conservative, very good. So let's put that in perspective. Donald Trump has publicly praised Project 2025, calling parts of the policy agenda very conservative and very good. So, when you're reading from woke media, you realize how they truncate words at times. And so I note in red, he called parts of the policy agenda very conservative and very good. And I believe even if we looked on it, we would say there are parts of it that are very good and they're very conservative. So there's no danger there, at least from my perspective. But during his 2024 presidential campaign, Trump distanced himself from the initiative. He called parts of the 900-page guideline spearheaded by the Heritage Foundation ridiculous and abysmal. So I don't think that changes the calculus when it says parts of it are conservative and good, and parts are ridiculous and abysmal by extension. But it goes on. On Thursday, Time magazine named Trump as 2024 Person of the Year and published an interview it conducted with the president-elect on November 25th. Speaking to the magazine, Trump softened his tone on the policy document. Though he continued to distance himself from Project 2025, Trump praised some of its ideas. I don't disagree with everything in Project 2025, but I disagree with something, he told Time. And then it goes on. I'm going to go to the skip over and go to the paragraph 4. Tony Clark, the executive director of the watchdog group Accountable U.S., said Trump's cabinet picks were a sign that he was charging ahead with Project 2025. So the cabinet appointments, from their perspective, show that the architects, or many of the architects, Project 2025 will be in Trump's second term cabinet. We must hasten to say, without speculation, that the president is still the chief diplomat. He is the one who endorses, authorizes any decision, but things can get to a point where even Congress, there can be such a supermajority vote that a presidential veto would be overruled. So these things are possible. Even if the president doesn't wish to have that type of policy idea or policy agenda, those decisions, his decision can be overruled with a supermajority in Congress. So there's always at risk. Reuters News, speaking of Project 2025, says Project 2025, what is it and how is it connected with Trump? And this is December 19th that they visited this topic. President-elect Donald Trump has named several high-profile conservatives associated with Project 2025 to his administration, despite repeatedly distancing himself from the hard-right initiatives on the campaign trail. What are the project's main proposals? This is important. Among other things, Project 2025 proposes enforcing laws that make it illegal to mail abortion pills over state lines, criminalizing pornography, and eliminating the Department of Education. Those things don't rise to the level of a threat to our liberties. But I'm going to show you something else that does. Goes on. The project also advocates the sweeping elimination of environmental regulations that crack down on programs to boost diversity in the workplace, which the project argues are broadly illegal. And again, even the FBI has, in December, walked away from its DEI woke culture and abandoned it. We see Facebook, Meta, said they're no longer sponsoring that. Walmart, a number of other huge employers are throwing in the towel on DEI, wokeism. To be expedient, of course, for the moment. And why did they wait until now to do that? Because they cannot be trusted, and we should not trust them. They're not our friends. They're in it for themselves and are only pretending that they suddenly came to the light where they should no longer censor free speech. Yahoo News used to censor free speech. You couldn't write a comment on the news. Now they've removed those restrictions, and we have seen this playbook before. Yahoo News on November 7th, immediately after the election, had this report, and this is interesting. After Trump's re-election, conservatives promote Project 2025. So there's that underlying, that underbelly, that there is a strong base that is driving this Project 2025 agenda. And we want to see what that is more deeply. And I spent a little while on this one here. Can we admit, here it says, the subheading says, can we admit now that we're going to implement Project 2025? Right-wing YouTuber Benny Johnson said. Now remember, all of these individuals, they're just individuals, even if they have large followings. It takes a president's decision to agree or disagree. With Donald Trump's reelection as president, the policy agenda that was written up by a conservative think tank is back at the forefront of conservative conversations over what a second Trump term could look like. Known as Project 2025, the 922-page document was crafted by the Heritage Foundation as a blueprint for the next Republican administration that would radically reshape how the American government works. Since Wednesday morning, multiple Trump supporters have come out to throw their support behind Project 2025. Conservative activist Matt Walsh posted on X, now that the election is over, I think we can finally say that, yeah, actually, Project 2025 is the agenda. Lol. Project 2025 is the agenda. So again, there is a strong base that sees that Project 2025 is that agenda. Goes on. Reacting to Walsh's post, Steve Bannon, Trump's former White House chief strategist, said on his podcast War Room Wednesday that Project 2025 is the agenda. Again, Steve Bannon is not in Trump's cabinet, and he has an opinion to himself with a large audience that listens. And so whether or not that will change the needle, we cannot say. But there is that that undercurrent of idea that Project 2025 is a way to get away from woke, to extricate ourselves from the woke culture that we have been simmered into. Project 2025 is the game plan. That really is the strategy. Texas's Tarrant County GOP chair, Beau French, also posted an X writing, so can we admit now that we're going to implement Project 2025? Conservative YouTuber, so we saw Benny Johnson, says, it is my honor to inform you all that Project 2025 was real the whole time. The Trump campaign has not commented on Project 2025. That's interesting. Trump himself hasn't, but there are activists out there who have, and they're making waves. What is Project 2025? This is the part that they're going to highlight something for us that takes our interest. What is Project 2025? It's a playbook that allows for the first 180 days from day one to define the president's direction and mandate. Some of its specific directives include an overhaul of the Department of Justice and FBI, former of which it labels a bloated bureaucracy. Because the employees who are infatuated with the perpetuation of a radical liberal agenda that wants to do house cleaning in that area. Remember we saw with the Pam Bondi interview that radical leftist agenda is toxic in the minds of many. They want to get rid of it. And to the extent that they want to get rid of it, we've seen now that even on their own, the FBI has decided to get rid of DEI. Then it says some of the other things that it will do are to eliminate the Department of Education, shut down the EPA's Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights. So I was wondering why they blended these two, but I figured out why. Um, but the environmental, the EPA, you're dealing with greenhouse gases and Sunday law. When you're dealing with environmental laws, you're dealing with Sunday laws. Impose wide restrictions on abortion access. So this is a politically troubling topic, that the abortion should either be outlawed 100%, although Trump says he would not do so because there are three exceptions that he wanted to make sure that are there. Ban pornography. But the one that really rings home for us is Seventh-day Adventists. And there are a few others, but this really rings out in a powerful way. Promote Sabbath rest. We've covered this numerous times on page 589, and they are correct. Promote Sabbath rest by encouraging Congress to amend the Fair Labor Standards Act to require people who work these days to be paid time and a half. Now, they read it and they immediately saw that this is actually a promotion of Sabbath rest. And this is one thing in which I overwhelmingly agree with them, because it has not, in all my readings, it has not been flagged as an area of concern. But here it shows that Project 2025 promotes Sabbath rest. And as we have said in the previous slide, that if January 20th fell on the Sunday, which is their Sabbath, then even the presidential inauguration could not be done on that day. That is a loud statement, a very loud one. And it goes on, this other one, number 6, have the federal government promote biblically based social science reinforced heterosexual marriages. So it says promote, and that's okay if the government promotes, not mandates. But when you see promotes, it's for government to get things done, it has to be a legislation. So these things are playing on the edges of liberty, because you're promoting biblically based social science reinforced marriages. And that can be complex. But the most complex part for us as Sabbatarians is the promotion of Sabbath rest. And we have looked on this and seen that that day defaults to Sunday. Just as we've also seen that the presidential inauguration cannot be done on a Sunday. By constitutional authority, it cannot be done on a Sunday. Now, certainly there are other things in it, such as the wokeism, the alphabet community, paragraph 7 and paragraph 8, remove sexual orientation, gender identity, DEI, and gender equality in federal employment and federal legislation. Those things we would not find concerning. But what we do find concerning is something like this that comes out of the Salt Lake Tribune. Latter-day Saints House Republican proposes bill to keep franchise locations from having to open Sundays. This is an interesting one because this is Utah. These are the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And they are promoting the Sabbath. You'll see North Dakota. We've seen in Louisiana and other southern states. There are about 30 states around the United States that are proposing policies to protect Sunday from desecration. So when you have a policy or a mandate to say, make America pray again, make America, just go to church again, then these can be overzealously implemented. Here it says, many Christians, including members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, take the biblical prescription, thou shalt not do any work on the Sabbath, not as a recommendation, but as a commandment. Thou shalt not do any work on the Sabbath as a commandment. This is January 9th in the State House. Now, a Utah legislature wants to make that edict a tad easier to heed by adding his own thou shalt not into state law forbidding corporations, from Burger King to Jiffy Lube to Pizza Hut, from requiring that franchise owners open on a Sunday. So we had one issue in New York and other western states, maybe New Jersey, where they were discouraging the use of these rest areas on the interstate, or not discouraging, but forcing Chick-fil-A to open on their Sabbath, on Sunday. And that was, so you have these two issues that you're dealing with. One says you cannot compel people to work on their Sabbath. So it says, and that's why it gives franchises, or forbidding franchises from requiring that franchise owners open on a Sunday. So if they had, like a Burger King or McDonald's, that these institutions open on Sunday, they want to put it in state law that Sunday must be protected. And it seems nice to say that these requirements are draconian, but we know that it's more to it. And just look at it in the headline. Bill to keep franchise locations from having to open on Sundays could be written differently. Bill to keep franchise locations closed on the Sabbath. This is what this bill is about. This bill is about respecting the religious beliefs and practices of those who choose to own and operate a franchise, so they can choose to preserve a day of rest or worship. Rep. Ken Ivory said in a news release. So this is a choice, but he wants that choice to be a state law, where it's now a mandate. So he's using the right word. They can choose, but now it's not the right application, because now, if I were of a different disposition and wanted to close my franchise on Saturday, that becomes a problem, because they're going to say, you can't have the franchise closed in 2 days. We must have uniformity here. When it becomes a state law, a state mandate, there's no flexibility. There's no workaround. And so they're pushing a Sunday Sabbath law for Utah, North Dakota, South Dakota, in a number of other places throughout the South and throughout the United States. These soft Sunday laws are being activated, and they're also in the bosom of Project 2025. Goes on. The bill provides them with the freedom to observe the same Sundays, accepted right and expectations enshrined in the U.S. Constitution. Notice we're seeing Sunday in relationship to rights that are enshrined in the U.S. Constitution. So it is not a hard stretch for a Sunday legislation to make its way through Congress in the fullness of time. Because when you get it at the state level, at the community level and the state level, then it's a matter of getting representation in Congress that will advance that. So they're building that foundation right now. They're building out these foundations, and we need to be cognizant of this. And watch how these laws are changing. It appears the West Jordan Republican is extrapolating from Section 7 of the U.S. Constitution, which states that any bill not returned by the President within 10 days, Sundays excepted, after it shall have been presented to him, the same shall be a law. This is the only place where the Sunday accepted phrase appears in the nation's founding document. But it doesn't matter if it's only there. The fact is that Sundays are spoken for in the Constitution. It's just one time too many. This is why a Supreme Court can interpret a Sunday legislation as a mandate that is a constitutional right. And when you get an overzealous Roman Catholic set of constitutional jurists, they can rule in favor of their church doctrine. Representative Ken Ivory from West Jordan recently announced a bill that would prevent franchisors from demanding store owners operate on Sundays unless business owners have already contracted to do so. So here you have these ideations are propping up in different sectors of the state and around the nation. The news release only mentions a Sunday exception. It doesn't state whether the proposed measure would offer similar religious freedom protection for Friday, the Sabbath for Muslims, or Saturday, the principal worship day for Seventh-day Adventists and followers of Judaism. The only exception that is granted in the Constitution is Sunday. And that sends a chilling note because there's an undercurrent that is building out a Sunday law even as we speak. Many of whom form the Roman Catholic inspired Project 2025. Here's Sister White on page 592, Great Controversy. The dignitaries of church and state will unite to bribe, persuade, or compel all classes to honor the Sunday. The lack of divine authority will be supplied by oppressive enactments. Political corruption is destroying love of justice and regard for truth. And even in free America, rulers and legislatures, in order to secure public favor, will yield to the popular demand for a law enforcing Sunday observance. But as I said, Sunday is already accepted in the U.S. Constitution. She continues, Last Day Events, page 144. The Protestant churches will unite with the papal power in persecuting the commandment keepers. This union will be cemented by the grand apostate. While he seeks to unite his adherents in a grand unity, he will urge his followers to suppress dissent and enforce Sunday observance. These are clear statements that we have from the founding teachers. Testimonies, volume 6, page 18. Foreign nations. This is why we say that this is a global, an expansionary move. And Marco Rubio is quite a symbol of the Roman Catholic Church. And being Secretary of State, that means he gets to set international policies for the United States. And it is more than just a figurehead. He also is an ambassador for the Church of Rome. That's what we need to appreciate and recognize. Foreign nations will follow the example of the United States. Though she leads out yet the same crisis will come upon our people in all parts of the world. And when it says leads out, many people don't, they get confused. She leads out in the persecution, just as she did with the poisonation. There were many countries that were doing a soft, soft peddling the jab or the job. But when the United States came aboard, then the whole world was fully apprised. And we saw the tyrant up in Canada and in other places of the world really showed their full colors. In 7 Bible Commentary, page 976, here's another statement that moderates the one above, page 18 of volume 6. Because here this one says, the decree enforcing the worship of this day, Sunday, is to go forth to all the world. In a limited degree, it has already gone forth. In a limited degree, it has already gone forth. In several places, the civil power is speaking with the voice of a dragon. So, we cannot say that it must happen here in the United States first. But as we saw with the poison, it had already gone forth. But when the United States gave strength to it, then it gave cover for all the others, because we're the protectors of liberty. And what happens when the referee becomes a bully? Who refs the game anymore? Well, before we close, I wanted to bring this other one to your attention. You heard in recent days that Joe Biden has removed or plans to remove Cuba from a state sponsor of terrorism. And as soon as that announcement was made, and it was indeed carried out, then Cuba started releasing prisoners. But what you perhaps did not know is the architect of that decision, the author of that decision. That decision did not come from the White House. It came from Rome. So here, Catholic News Agency of January 14th, 2025, their headline says, White House to remove Cuba from terror list amid Vatican's efforts at prisoner release. But the headline doesn't say as much as the content. The Biden administration, in its final days, will remove Cuba from the U.S. State Department's state sponsor of terrorism list. A decision the White House says was facilitated with the help of the Vatican to secure the release of political prisoners there. We can read that and say, oh, their role was just to release political prisoners. But I shared with you the role of the Catholic Church throughout the centuries. A senior administration official told media in a call on Tuesday that President Joe Biden would be lifting Cuba from the list. Rome knew that first, and they were perhaps the first to report it. The country has been just one of 4 on the list, the others being North Korea, Syria, and Iran. But why Cuba? You'll understand in a little bit, in 2 paragraphs. The White House has coordinated with the Catholic Church, among others, to improve conditions in Cuba and secure the release of political prisoners, the official said on Tuesday. So there's a coordinated, just as we said, the 2-horned beast is to coordinate with the healed beast in enforcing policies that are sympathetic to the healed beast, global expansionary ambitions. And so the White House has coordinated with the Catholic Church, among others, to carry this off. And then it goes further. In addition to removing Cuba from the terror list, the White House will also issue the country a waiver from Title III of the 1996 Helms-Burton Act, which strengthened embargo provisions against Cuba to relieve the economic burden, to allow them to buy and sell. Is there a trade-off that will be given here? There are trade-offs. But Cuba is a majority Catholic country, they tell us. Cuba is majority Catholic. Church leaders there for years have been involved in negotiations with the communist government regarding human rights and market reforms. Pope Francis hosted Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel at the Vatican in 2023. Francis also visited the country in 2015, but he was not the only one. St. John Paul, which is Pope John Paul II, likewise famously visited the island in 1998, but he was not the only one. He was the first, becoming the first pope to do so. Pope Benedict XVI also visited the nation. So the last three popes visited Cuba. Why? There's a reason. It's the global expansionary move of the church and getting the influence of the church in every state government and national government around the country and around the world. Now, I want to take us to, and let me see if we have time. I wanted to give you this last one. I see that our time is moving away rapidly. I'll jump down to our concluding passage here. In Daniel 11, verse 45, the Bible says, and speaking of the two horns, the king of the north, and he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. Now this particular activity, the Pope was not in favor of, at least externally, and he and President Trump were at great odds, and may still be at ideological odds, I don't know. But this passage brings us to the fulfillment of the United States relocating its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And this two-horn beast power, represented by the king of the north here, carried out this act, planted the tabernacles between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. In spite of that, though, he, the king of the north, shall come to his end, and none shall help him. And it is yet to be seen, time alone will tell, how this prophecy will play out in all its details. But it's only the last act that's left in this verse. Because we're at Daniel 11:45.1. Daniel 11:45.2. This portion, yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him, is what stands between us. Michael standing up. Now, Victor Houteff, recognizing this prophecy in his book, Timely Greeting, number 42, volume 2, Timely Greeting, number 42, page 27, says the only portion of Daniel 11 yet to be fulfilled is this verse, the last of the chapter. And since these prophecies are made to be understood only when they're being fulfilled, or after fulfillment, verse 45 is not as clear as we should like to have it. Consequently, concerning the place of his tabernacles and his end, also as to whether another Christian power shall inherit the title King of the North, before verse 45 is fulfilled, only time itself will tell. Only time itself will positively portray the whole truth. And so we're here watching, and as the events unfold, we apprise ourselves on these things to see where they fall. But long ago we've been told, as of 1995, the Jerusalem Embassy Act of Congress, not of a unique president, but of the United States, was enacted. Part 2 of that act said Jerusalem must be recognized as the capital of the state of Israel. Part 3 says the U.S. Embassy in Israel must be established in Jerusalem no later than May 31 of 1999. But of course that date came and went, and 3 presidents came and went, maybe 4. But under Donald John Trump, he said he was not going to kick that can down the road any further, and he enacted the act, which is now law and now history. We can look at it in the rearview mirror that the United States Embassy in Israel is in Jerusalem. This is what the prophecy demands. It is most necessary then for us to realize how close we are to the wrapping up time of this stage of the affairs. This brings us to the time of the judgment for the living in the house of God. Notice now in Daniel 12, as we move toward our closing, at that time shall Michael stand up, when the king from the north comes to his end. That's what brings him to his end. Michael standing up is a crushing blow to the king of the north. At that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament. They that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. So here when Michael stands up, only those whose names are found in his book will be delivered. That means it's a judgment upon the living. And if there's a time of trouble, the time of trouble is upon the living, not upon the dead. And if out of that time of trouble, those that are written in his book are delivered, it's a judgment upon the living. That means those who were not written in his book were destroyed. This we see, it's a dual work of destruction that's going on. While God is purifying the land, removing the undesired element of the king of the north and all the others from there, he's simultaneously cleaning up his church so that he can have a clean people for a clean land. Because where the glorious holy mountain is, that's where Michael stands up. That's where his pre-Advent kingdom will be. In that land that was given to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is where the church will be repositioned. Remember, Revelation 13:15 says, all who oppose this mark of the beast system will not worship according to the image of the beast should be killed. They can't buy or sell. They can't exist in these economies. So God, in his mercies, saw this and made provision, a way of escape for his church. So Michael stands up, delivers them, and establishes them in the Holy Land for the final gospel work. Daniel 2:44. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. This, therefore, is where your mind and mine should be. Our minds must be fixed on that other time. We're watching the rapidly fulfilling prophecies. We're seeing how Rome is setting her building blocks for a super return in a big way. The evangelicals have joined in tow. We've seen Sunday legislation being moved throughout state assembly houses in quick succession. And it won't be long before it comes up to the U.S. Congress for consideration. Then up to the presidential bench for signing. This is going to be more than a Supreme Court decision. Certainly a Supreme Court decision can take us there very rapidly, but to make it permanent, Congress makes laws. And they are moving on this as we speak. God has made protection and provision so that when this time comes, his church will not be found a hostage in any of these countries of the beast. In fact, there be no country in the world that will have a hiding place, a harboring place for the true worshipers. They will be hunted down as evil men and evil women, as evil people, and a death penalty will be exacted against them. Just think of these climate change laws that are out there, even if they're tempered under Trump's threat to remove the United States from Paris Climate Agreement. It will only take another president to restore that. Or if the climate accords people decide that after the first entrant this law is binding, they will meet perhaps and say, our laws are binding And you can't just jump in and jump out, play hopscotch as you please. You're in for good. Once in, it's intractable. And all of these things are in the, in limbo. We're standing between these realities. But most importantly, though, is the fact that God has promised to set up a kingdom. It will not be left to other people. Watch carefully. The other people are the unrighteous, not be left to other people, but only those who diligently do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with their God. And we're told in Daniel 12 that out of this standing up of Michael, a group of righteous saints will be righteous people, saints, the wise, they will be resurrected. And God will use them as ambassadors of peace. They will proclaim the everlasting gospel to a lost and dying world. That's the last gospel message, which will either save or condemn men. And Sister White saw it clearly. In 1899, Signs of the Times, December 27th, she said, "Your work, my work, will not cease with this life. For a little while we may rest in the grave, but when the call comes, we shall take up our work in the kingdom of God to advance the glory of Christ." And by the way, this holy work must be begun upon earth. This is why God is inviting us. Fix our minds upon that other time. Some of us may go through the portals of the tomb. Others may be translated without tasting death. But whether by the tomb or by translation, we must all be sealed and be separated, having our names permanently engraved in Michael's Book of Life. And it is my prayer that as a people, we strive with all the power God has given us to be numbered among the saved of this generation, to be found in Michael's Book of Life. May we keep our minds, my brethren, my friends, that other time is my prayer.